Hello, and welcome to Wow Mom. This is Ellen Mongan, and today we're in for a real treat. Before I go on to what we're going to have today, I'm going to introduce my co-host, mother of 11, amazing woman of God, and Jane Ann. Hello, Wow Mom.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How was your weekend? I always ask the same question because our weekends are so full.
Yes, our weekend was great. It was great. We enjoyed a lot of sunshine here in the South, and I'm so excited. Spring is completely here.
Yeah, we had to go down to West Palm area for Mom. She had surgery and we got there. And they did, we were like not needed, but we did get to eat lunch. We were like, okay. But it was a long trip. So we're happy to be at the beach here in Jekyll, just having a mental health break. I think our mom needs one. Don't you think, Jen? You need like time away with your husband to recoup, restore, and let go. Life is good.
It makes a huge difference. It really does for just from mental clarity, if anything.
I said this husband, I think that's the beach. Can I buy a beach house? Can you please introduce our wonderful guest, Jane Ann? You always my bio. She always does a great job.
Okay, yes. Okay. Kimberly Cook, we're so glad to have you. This is super exciting. Kimberly is a writer, podcaster, mother, and she holds an MA in systematic theology. She's also a Catholic apologist. And she's also recently written a book called Motherhood Redeemed, How Radical Feminism Betrayed Maternal Love. I like that title. Kimberly Cook walked away from a radical and destructive path to embrace truths of Christ. She will share her insights on the theology of a new feminism so that modern women can reclaim femininity. And what I say is she has a huge mission that she's already begun. And this is really a challenging mission, I think, especially in the times we are. So welcome, Kimberly. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you both. I'm excited to be here. This is going to be a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm excited to learn and to glean and then to, discuss.
Yes. Oh, yes. Look, this is Kimberly's book. And so, Kimberly, do you want to, we always say, do you want to look into the bio? We read, that's what we got for you, but do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think that you guys pretty much covered it, especially just saying that, as Jane Ann said, that it's a big mission. I think it really is. I think it's a challenging mission. I definitely didn't go into an easy field here, I think, with trying to talk about feminism and femininity, and especially as our culture continues in the direction it's going, this is not a popular topic, and I'm not a popular person.
No, but
that's okay.
It's a journey you take that leads you to the mission, your mission. That's how I feel. My mission was motherhood, and I had 8 children. And so I minister a lot to babies that mothers have babies that die, although it's my main thing. And I read in your thing, that's one of the things that you had happen as well. And Jane Ann as well share that burden of like, the journey's not always easy, right?
Yeah, it's definitely something. I think a lot of women go through miscarriage, and I think a lot of them go through it silently, which is what I found as well with postpartum depression. I shared a little bit about that in the book as well. And I think those are 2 things that a lot of moms suffer, and they feel like they can't really talk about it, or it's not very well accepted in society to talk about. If you go through a miscarriage, there's the idea that, well, this wasn't really a child yet, or it's not like you really lost a child that you had or something like that. And so a lot of times women get that feedback even from their own family or close friends. So it is hard to, I think, share your heart with people when you get that kind of feedback. And maybe you're even saying that in your own head. I shouldn't be feeling this way. I shouldn't be mourning a child that wasn't really here or something like that. And so I think, thankfully, a lot of women have started stepping up in the church to speak about miscarriage and to encourage other people to speak about it and to be able to mourn and to be able to affirm the life of that child and the family member that's no longer with us, that kind of thing. And so I think that that is the way that we have a positive feminine voice, our voice as mothers, our voice as women, to comfort and console each other and to recognize life in those areas. That's very pro-life as well. And the same with postpartum depression, to be able to comfort and share with other women as well, so that that doesn't become the end of their motherhood. I mean, I suffered that with our second child, and I really could not ever imagine having another child after that point because I had so much fear of going through that again. And I think that without the proper support, a lot of women do end their families early because of that fear, or because of the lack of support. So I think those are definitely two of the ways, the areas that women can step up and speak out and encourage sisters in Christ to, be pro-life all the way along from conception until delivery, and then for the rest of their life, your child's life on earth.
I want to show the book. I didn't mean to lead us in a direction that was sad right away. I'm saying, but that's what really makes you a woman. You say, well, gee, it doesn't happen every time with every woman. This is the book. It's beautiful cover. It's called Motherhood Redeemed. I was telling our author, Kimberly Cook, that she authored the book that it's not the kind of book you sit down, you can't put down, and you want to read the whole thing in one bathroom sitting or something. Because I read it was a bathroom read. No, it wasn't. This is a book you take to the beach and you savor each chapter. You read one chapter and then you think about it and you go apart. It's a very in-depth filled thing. As I'm saying to my friend Jane Ann, it's very well studied in it. My husband, he likes to indulge in it. And I didn't take all the journeys you have taken except for the postpartum and the baby path. I might be a full term. Those are the two I relate to. So I didn't lead to a sad direction, but she has a lot of wisdom. Do you want to tell your testimony, just a little succinct? And I'm not going to tell me a succinct part of your testimony, because I think that was fabulous. She was from I said I was, let's see, Sound of Music, one of the nuns, to Rebel Without a Cause. We're starting to go, Lord, I'm out of my league. I don't know anything about women's lib. I was like the girly girl with fat leather shoes, the big bow in the back, and going, hello, here I am. See, the cheerleader personality. So I'm so glad to meet you again, and please share your testimony.
Sure. Yeah. Just to give a brief testimony, I was raised like a lot of other Catholics were, I think, where cradle Catholic, but not really a rich Catholic tradition in the home. Our Catholicism was just going into the pew every Sunday and prayers before a meal and before bed, but we didn't have the faith as a family. We weren't really learning about the faith. I went to public school, and so we had to go to CCD, my brother and I. And so once a week, we would go and basically color pictures of Jesus and things like that. It was not a good catechesis at all. And it was not preparing us for public high school, which we were about to enter. And, we were going to learn about so many heavy topics, homosexuality and abortion and, the transgender stuff. And we were going to be faced with all of that. And there weren't going to be any other Catholics there, at least in my public school. The friend circle that I ran with, almost none of them were even Christian, or some identified as Christian, but they weren't really living the Christian faith. And they were more agnostic or atheist, most of my friends. So, the things that I was being challenged with, coloring pictures of Jesus feeding 5,000 didn't help me to answer these very tough questions. And so my brother and I started to challenge my parents, why do we do this? Why do we go to mass every Sunday? Why does it have to be a priest? Why do you have to go to just a priest for confession? All those kind of questions that you hear all the time from people outside of the church. Why Mary, the saints? Aren't we idolaters? Just can't we pray on our own at home? We started hitting my parents with all of those questions. And my parents had been catechized in the 60s and 70s. So their catechesis was extremely poor. And although my mom went to many years of Catholic school with nuns and everything, she still didn't even know about the real presence of the Eucharist, So that tells you, being raised through Catholic school, she still did. That was like the one most important thing that you would hope to gain from that education. And that was something that I told her later when I came back to the church, and she was like, no, I think you got that wrong. I think it's symbolic. And I was like, Mom, you were taught by nuns in a Catholic school. I went to public school, with atheists and agnostics and everything. Yes, it's Catholics. Yes, it's the real presence. So anyway, my parents couldn't answer those questions, needless to say. And it really started to shake their faith as well, because I think for the first time they started to say, why are we doing this kind of stuff? Or what? They didn't have those answers. And it wasn't as easy back then. You couldn't just hop on the internet and, find stuff like you can today, things like that. So for them, they didn't know where to look. They didn't know what the catechism was. They didn't have a good relationship with a priest or anything. So what happened was we all as a family fell away. My parents just said, I don't know, you might have some valid points, but either way, we're sick of fighting with you guys. And so we're not going to do this anymore. So I went into those 4 years of high school without any faith. We just stopped everything. We just fell away as a family. So public high school, atheist, agnostic friends, no faith to fall back on, and really not much of a faith foundation in the first place. I didn't know the rosary. I didn't know any of the saints except for the most popular ones, things like that. I had a very secular Catholic education, really. So it was a dark 4 years, a lot of sadness, depression, anger, forming these friendships with other people that were in that same kind of boat. And then I really clung to the feminist movement because I met several friends that were very into the underground feminist punk scene. And I liked music and I liked punk music and I played guitar. And so I wound up getting into an all-girl band, and we started this feminist punk band. And we started to make more and more friends who were in that same kind of scene. And so one thing led to another, and my life just took that course and followed along that path. And I thought, okay, this is what I want to do with my life, be a feminist musician and an advocate for women's rights in this way, but of course, in the worst of ways. And so finally, as most people do, you start questioning, there's got to be something more. This is depressing and sad. And if there's nothing after this life, and this life really has no meaning, then what's the point? And what are we doing here? And, we're not actually that happy. At least we weren't. So what is the point of living a sad life with nothing after to come? And so that darkness, thankfully, for me, spurred me to look deeper and to find God. Basically, I needed to find him. That was my last mission, because if I could not find God, then I wasn't going to stick around. There was no point. If there was no God, if there was no eternity, then there was no point to this life, and I wasn't going to stick around. So that was kind of my mentality. And thankfully, it led me in that path, because a lot of people that I knew, it didn't lead in that path, and they didn't have that hunger to find answers or to find God. And so thankfully that led me eventually to Franciscan University of Steubenville to study mental health and theology, and then go on to get my master's in theology. And of course, everything changed, and my life really took a Pauline turn from that point on. And I still had that desire to help women and speak to women, but the Lord, showed me that he still wanted that for me. And that still was a gift and something that he put on my heart. But I was like St. Paul, going at it the completely wrong way at first. And he just kind of needed to turn me around with that passion so I could run full force in the other direction.
So what do you think, Jane Ann? We wrote crushes. We almost never stick to our script. That's one of the beauties of being on the show. I send them the notes late, first the rough draft. So Jan, do you have any questions? I have one after you. Why don't you ask me?
I just want to say that I was reading about your book. I have not read it yet, but I love the fact. So this really isn't a question. I guess it's a little bit of a fact leading up to it. But I love the way that the Lord has taken you in this direction, because, I think that you have what you have because you were baptized as a Catholic as an infant, and that's the Holy Spirit with you, and so God is so faithful. He's not going to leave us hanging. So he really guides you. And I love that. I love the fact that you are hitting this hard topic, because you are really outspoken about this. I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate your vulnerability. But I was reading a little bit about your book and how you wrote about Margaret Sanger, and you had read her autobiography. And so anyway, when I was reading that, because I had just taught our children about Margaret Sanger, I think when the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and that brought up a lot of questions. And so we homeschool, so I was talking about that and kind of talking about her cause that she was after, and like Margaret Sanger was kind of her, hero, idol, whatever. And so I really got to dig in a little bit. But there's one thing I want to say that in your book that you wrote was written by her in her autobiography, which I found very interesting. And that is, she said at the end, she even said at the end, motherhood is not only the oldest, but the most important profession in the world. I found that to be so, I don't know, like ironic that she took that whole path and left her motherhood left her children, and they were begging for her. I just kind of, anyway. So I guess like what would you say to women right now, like young women right now? Because I think that's really the audience is younger women, because I see it, we have young teenagers right now. And like, what would you say to them about motherhood, about your, looking for, just appreciating what God has given you?
Right. Yes. Well, Margaret Sanger was a very, first of all, conflicted character. And that's why I took a few chapters to unpack her in my book, because I think people know so little about her, either from the Catholic pro-life perspective, she's this absolute monster, and from the other perspective, the pro-choice perspective, she's this heroine, who's this kind of icon that we need to follow in the footsteps of. And what I found is that Margaret Sanger is very much in the middle. She's really not the monster. She's definitely not the heroine, but she's just a very conflicted person. And I see that the kind of angel devil on her shoulder throughout her whole life. I mean, she was a family of 11. She comes from a family of 11, and she really loved the big family life of her childhood. But there was a lot of poverty. And then when she was a nurse, she saw a lot of that poverty, which changed her mind towards big families. And then she had 3 of her own children, and she actually wanted quite a few more children. She wanted to be a mother of a large family, but she wasn't physically able to, after the 3rd child, have any more children. So that was not necessarily a choice to have, 3 children and to stop there. So you see that just life circumstances and just different things in her life took her to where she was. And a lot of influence from her father, who was an active socialist.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were fallen away Catholics. Her parents were Irish Catholic immigrants who fell away from the church. So it shows you when you have, when you go away from the church, how much damage you can do to the church, and to that kind of thing. So you see throughout Margaret Sanger's whole human experience, this constant battle. And I think that a lot of women are in that battle. She really wanted to stay at home with her children and be a mother, but then she felt like it was her mission to be out in the workforce, finding an answer for contraception. That was her main mission. Like, I need to do this. And she almost felt like it was like this divine appointment that she had. And so she was really mixed up, like, I would love to stay home and be a mother to these children. That's where my heart is. But I know that I have this greater mission that I'm being called to, which is to bring contraception to the United States. So it was like, you look at it and it seems so clear that that's wrong, but that's really how she saw it. And I think, to answer your question, Jane Ann, a lot of teenagers are caught in that same pull. And I know for me, now I had a stay-at-home mother, and I had I have a good mother, and I have good parents, and we had a good family foundation as far as example of what motherhood and fatherhood is, and a good, healthy marriage, things like that. So I had a good example at home. But the thing is, of course, we didn't have the faith to guide that. And I didn't have any other peer groups that were encouraging that, and that is so important for young people. A lot of times you don't want to just listen to your parents. You need to hear it from other people. And when nobody in your peer group is saying anything that your parents are saying, somebody's got to be wrong. And a lot of times as a young person, you choose your peer group. And of course, I was, watching regular media, things like that at that time. So I was taking in everything that I saw on MTV and the radio and everything, as gospel. So um, for me, my concept of motherhood was it's a worst case scenario. It's basically the worst thing that can happen to you as a woman. It is for the women who have no education, no prospects, and no future. If you're not smart enough to go to college, if you're not ambitious enough to enter the workforce and make something of yourself, if you just need to go from being taken care of by your parents to being taken care of by a man, then that just go have a bunch of babies, stay home, and don't do anything to contribute to society. That was kind of the fullness of what I thought of motherhood, which is so ridiculous because, of course, you don't think, okay, a mother is giving everything to this child. She's shaping these children with all their morals, values, everything. This next generation is going to eventually be, the president, the doctors, the lawyers, the priests, the nuns, the teachers. So there's this disconnect in the mentality that, she obviously is shaping the next generation. I guess it's this thought, well, she can just nurture them in their younger years, and then you can kind of funnel them all into public school where they can get the real education that they need to not turn out like her. That was kind of, and you see, it's really like an influence of communism and socialism.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
I love that. I don't want to interrupt because it's such a fine point. So please continue. I love that because that's speaking to mothers today. We can't say like every mother needs to stand with their children and then the kids. Some mothers aren't really equipped to do that. They should. Some are, some aren't. And then we have shows like there's been shows about all mothers are working mothers, and so I don't know what can you do to address that because there are some others out there that are single, they have to work. I was fortunate to be able to stay home with mine. I had never even babysat. I didn't know what I was doing, but I had Jesus. That's what I had. So I just I'm glad I did that looking back, but I think that there is some point we have to, I don't know, how could you address that? Because I have one more question. I have a lot more questions. We have very little time, but I do enjoy loving back. Go on. So how would you address that just so you don't end up, a lot of times you don't want someone to go under in guilt if they have to do. I'm a firm believer. We're going to read a quote at the end, Jane. Do you have the quote by the cardinal? Read a quote at the end. Remember the cardinal? Okay, we'll read it at the end. Go on. How would you address those women?
Yeah, I think first of all, we do have this idea that you have to be fully equipped for motherhood. Like you need to have your PhD in motherhood in order to have a child or something like that. So I think there is this fear factor and this intimidation in our culture. And even people like Margaret Sanger said that. How could these people, when she would do her tour, she said, I can't believe that anyone who was half-witted or an imbecile thought that they were capable of having a child just because of desire. So it was this idea that you needed to have a income, you needed to have a level of education, you needed to have credentials basically to raise a child. And I think that is a fear factor that young people face today. Like I've never even babysat, I'm not able to raise a child, or I don't even know how to take care of myself. So I think first of all, we need to give young people the confidence that parenthood is not something that you will get right. It's not something that may come easy, but it is something that you're called to and something that you grow into, and something that hopefully draws you closer to the Lord. And I think for our society to address working mothers, yes, we are in a society where unfortunately women can't always stay home with their children circumstantially, either because they need a dual income just to survive. We're not talking about vacations and nice cars or whatever, but there are families, especially with our economy, that may need the dual income just to get by. And then there's also, of course, situations where a woman's raising her children alone, so she can't stay home with her children. But I think more often too, I see women who can stay home. They do have the finances, the resources. And I've talked to many women who say, I don't need to work. Their husband has a great job and he's willing to have her stay home, and they don't need the income. They don't, it's not going to cause any conflict in marriage if she says, I want to stay home. But it's just that she chooses to work because there's no accolades basically in staying at home. And some women they
Don't
feel,
tell anybody. Don't tell them.
it's not like you get the diaper change of the year award or like a bonus for like staying up all night for a certain number of nights. Like you were the parent who stayed up the most nights this year. So here's your bonus, and your new Ferrari or something like that. There's no accolades, there's no bonuses, there's no recognition, there's no community, workplace dinner award ceremonies or things like that. And I think sometimes we, especially when you're in the workforce for so long before marriage, which I think is more the case because marriage is getting pushed out later and later, into 30s and beyond. So you have maybe 10 or more years of being in that kind of environment, and you're used to that, wearing the nice suits or skirts or whatever, and getting your morning coffee on the way to work, and you kind of get in this routine and you like the recognition, and it's hard. It is hard to go then to not wearing nice clothes because you're going to get thrown up on or something like that, or spit up on, and not having accolades and not having that kind of interaction. Even it can be isolating and lonely when you're a new mother and you don't have groups of mothers around you. And it was different when you went to work and you were surrounded by this buzzing office and friends and lunches and things like that. So I think that for women, sometimes it can be very hard to make that switch in your mind and in your life. And it is a lot of sacrifice. And I think that's something in our culture that is a bad word. Sacrifice is not something that you want to embrace. So that is where living the Christian life is so opposed to what the culture puts out there. And that's why I think it's so important to show that we are called to this vocation. And there is immense sacrifice in it. I think it would be easier for me to go to work every day and to have that lifestyle, to pick up my coffee, to wear nice clothes, to be in the buzzing office, chattering with friends all day, to feel productive and get recognized for my work. Yes, for me, that would be much easier, but it is not for me, it is not fulfilling because it's not what I'm called to do. And it's just like any other vocation, the religious life or whatever, you could choose a different path, but it's not going to be as fulfilling as what God really put on your heart. And I think we need to show motherhood as a vocation in which you want the fullness of that experience. You want the joy, the suffering, all the rest, and you can do it. You can stay home with your own children. You can raise and educate your own children without a PhD or without experience with children or having younger siblings or anything like that. So I think we do need to restore the confidence of young women and restore the idea of motherhood as a vocation, not a worst case scenario that you fall into because there's no other hope for you, and you're basically a loser. So you might as well just stay home and have babies to keep the population going, because that is what society tells us.
Yeah, I'm thinking this. I tell young mothers a lot. They say, I want to do something important. I always say, mother is the most important job you'll do. You'll form the next generation, or else someone else will do it for you. And so that was what I was going to say for comment here. But here's my question. I want to encourage you, because so many people out there listening, and they had the same upbringing as Kimberly. They weren't given the skills to be fully Catholic to carry them through to their high school years, or saddened be, but then they were. So I'm echoing, I think, but that's okay. I'm an echo. But I think I admire you, because I tell young people, you can't just sit in the pew and be Catholic as your mama taught you. You have to embrace the faith yourself. You have to have a conversion of heart, that you don't go to church because and a lot of times in Florida, I go into church and I got to go there. They walk out after communion. Not here in Georgia. I'm not slamming the whole state. I'm saying that's their mentality of going to receive the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Eucharist. You're out the door. So I admire that you sought the Lord for yourself. You waited on him, and you embraced the cross. That mother is not a cross, but it's middle name of a mother is sacrifice. We know that because we're doing God's work. We're raising children of character and virtue. And so I admire that in you. And I want you to tell the young people out there what you think if they don't seek the Lord and they had a poorly catechized upbringing, then because or some give really good upbringing. So what would you say to them?
I would definitely say to try to get into a peer group and you can't just necessarily find a peer group if they're not around, but you can certainly find a youth group at the local church or things like that. I would say to first and foremost, to surround yourself by other young people who are seeking the Lord like you are, because it is difficult to do alone. And we're not meant to do these kind of things alone. We are meant to be a church, to be a community, and to walk and journey together. And so I think the first thing is to surround yourself with the right people. And when I made that break and decided to go to Steubenville, the first thing I had to do was end all those friendships that I had, and because there was nothing positive coming out of any of those. And I knew that if I was starting over and starting fresh, I had to break with all these ties. And so when I went to Steubenville, I basically went completely friendless. And with, a lot of people will get together with high school friends or do things like that now, even as adults. And I don't have any connection. It's almost like I erased my whole history um, before college and just started over. So it's like my longest friendships are from college on because I had to break with everything before. So the sooner you can make those good friendships, the earlier you can make those good friendships, those healthy and encouraging friendships, I think that is really important. And then a lot of times with youth groups, they are reading things together, maybe starting a book club and reading about a saint or, having these positive discussions. And I think that's something that's invaluable to discuss with other people your same age, and also to be able to discuss how opposed your faith is from the culture, because it's just going to get worse in college and after. And it's something that young people, I think, need to recognize, and also to be prepared to constantly be going against the larger part of society, because a lot of times with young people, it's easy to just fall into following, and it's easy to fall into not wanting to be different all the time. And that's what you see even in big Catholic families where they were raised well, but there's one or two kids that go the other way because they're just tired of fighting. They don't always want to be the black sheep unless they're in a Catholic circle. And so I think that is something that's important, is to help equip them with this normalization of the truth and a peer group that they don't always have to be on the defensive. They don't always have to be the black sheep all the time, because I think for many personality types, that just is too exhausting and it's easier to just give up.
And what do you say? What do you have for a question? She has kids. A lot of kids are college age, I think. I don't know the ages.
I'm taking some notes. Because I have 5 girls right now from 16 to 9 right now that I'm homeschooling. Well, really 4, but yeah. So and it's really hard here because we live in the deep South. So we are right below the Mason-Dixon line, which means Catholics are, pretty much there's not many of us. And so, right now our kids struggle with that. They really have no Catholic friends. They're all Protestant friends, which is not a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but they don't have others to encourage them in their faith. It's just pretty much me and JR.
But y'all do a great job. And the thing is that our kids were in a Christian community. So of course the peer pressure was mostly Catholic, and everyone loved one another, and we stayed on the basics of, now we've moved on past the deacons. So our kids, like we started to do our grandkids. Pat and I are going to start having our grandkids over, the older teens, and have open discussion. That was a big, my husband, he was a big around the table talk and share kind of guy, where he talked about current issues. And that's why I wanted to touch on the current issues that you brought in the book, because the book, we majored on the first part of the book, but it was major on, abortion is wrong, contraceptive, wrong, all the different things are very controversial. So we really only have a few minutes left, and I don't know why I'm echoing, but yay. But please touch on those.
Sure. Yeah. So with the book, I tell my story, of course, but I also wanted to tell the history of feminism because, as you mentioned, Ellen, it's important to have those open discussions with our children and the round table, and not just to say we do it because we do it, but this is why, and this is the meaning and the depth and the richness of our faith. And so, what I wanted to do is tell the history of feminism and just unpack it from a just logical perspective. Not saying feminism is awful and everything about it is evil and bad, but I wanted to say here is a just rational look at feminism from the 19th century to today. Here's how it's changed. Here's what the different waves of feminism were. You can kind of make your own decisions based on what these people have said themselves. I'm quoting these suffragettes and these feminists directly because I think that that is so important. And this book is important for young women, especially because feminism is something, it's a form of relativism, and it's something that's not going away. And it's something that's always been a part of our culture. And that's what I show from the 19th century. And before that, from the foundation of this country, feminism has shaped this country, and it continues to shape this country, and it will never go away. So to just avoid it or to just give your children the cliff notes, I don't think is going to be enough. But to understand it, my book is almost like a little bit of a history lesson on feminism. And I think that it's really necessary for young women, especially, to understand, okay, where did abortion come into the picture? Because a lot of people don't realize it was extremely prevalent in the 19th century, maybe even more than today. And it was accepted and it was well visited by the wealthy as well as the poor and anyone in between as a method of birth control. So all of those kind of things, of course, Margaret Sanger coming in with contraception and then the 60s and 70s sexual revolution, that was just stoking the fire that was already there. People think that there was this major turn in the sexual revolution. That's absolutely not true. That was already building for a long time. And we see a lot of the same things today when we talk about a woman is only a woman if she feels like she is internally, there's nothing biological or whatever. That was said in 1949 by one of the most prominent feminist philosophers, Simone de Beauvoir. That was before the sexual revolution. And, she also said that abortion should be a regular part of women's healthcare. Again, 1949. So the feminist movement, we look at these things and we're saying, wow, it's getting so radical. Things are getting so crazy. I can't believe now we're talking about we don't even know what a woman is, and abortion should just be visited as a regular part of our healthcare or something like that. We see these and we think that they're radical, that they're new ideas. And I look at feminism and I say there's nothing new under the sun, because this stuff has been said for so long, from the 19th century. This stuff has been said, and it's just now more accepted by society. We see that society has accepted this and it's become more prominent, but this has always been part of the feminist platform from the earliest times. So I think that that's something that women need to understand. There wasn't this pure feminism that was corrupted somewhere along the way. And the reason is because so many Catholics, especially women, want so badly to call themselves feminists because it sounds kind of edgy and progressive, and they want to be a pro-life feminist or a Catholic feminist or whatever. I meet so many women that want to call themselves feminists because they want to have that kind of foot in both worlds a little bit. And I think that's why my book is important. And a lot of women who have called themselves feminists after reading it say, wow, I guess I can't really use that title anymore.
And don't you think that I'm glad to be a woman? I think the message mainly, like you said, is to explain the history of it and to go forth and make change. Like Susan B. Anthony and her friend Elizabeth, we're going in a good direction. It just got distorted as the years of feminine grew. It grew the direction that we're stronger against we don't want doormat women, and we don't want women that don't speak out. So, right, Jan, we want to be like our voice is heard in the family,
right,
in the society. So we're going to do last words, and I'm not going to say much because I'm not going. Oh, Jan. last word?
Okay, I'm just gonna read the quote that's in in your book, and it's from a cardinal. It says, the most important person on earth is a mother. She cannot claim the honor of having built Notre Dame Cathedral. She need not. She has built something more magnificent than any cathedral, a dwelling for an immortal soul, the tiny perfection of her baby's body. The angels have not been blessed with such a grace. They cannot share in God's creative miracle to bring new saints to heaven. Only a human mother can. Mothers are closer to God, the creator, than any other creatures. God joins forces with mothers in performing this act of creation. What on God's good earth is more glorious than this, to be a mother?
Thank you, Jane Ann. And do you want to have a final thought? And I'm going to have you tell you, I'm going to hold this up for everybody to see a little closer to you. And it's beautiful cover. I enjoyed it. I love history. I'm not as knowledgeable as you two are. I don't care, though I did learn. I want to go and learn. Go on.
I'm so glad you did. Yes, I would say amen to that quote. It's such a beautiful quote. I love that one. And I agree. I think that's something that we need to impress upon people, especially when you hear these allegations against women. Well, there's never been a female Mozart. There's never been, when we look at some of, a female Michelangelo or things like that, these exceptional artists or creators. And a lot of times there is this derogatory statement about how women have never really created anything extraordinary. And yet here we are. Every person has a mother, and so Michelangelo had a mother, and Mozart had a mother, and they were born. And if they had not been born, there would be no Michelangelo and no Mozart, and so on and so forth. And so, again, we're looking at the product and not the beauty of the actual creation in the first place. And so, again, there has to be a disconnect in order for this stuff to make sense.
Yes, and how can we reach you, and what are you doing? Like, what is God calling you to do at the present, and how can they reach you? Have you speak at their place or be on the show?
Absolutely. You can find me at kimberlycook.me. That's my website, and so you can really find all information there. You can find my book and my podcast and my articles there. And I'm still writing for Tan. I'm working on another book right now for Tan. It's actually a fiction book for middle grade girls.
Nice.
So it's a little bit of a different direction, but still, I feel like good literature for young women is really missing in our society. Yeah. You reread Anne of Green Gables and Laura Ingalls and all that kind of stuff so many times, but there's really nothing modern that is decent anymore, in my opinion. We read a lot of books here, and we're rereading a lot of the old literature over and over again. And there is this deficit for that age group and, that gender. So I'm going to try to do what I can there. I really feel called to do that. And then also I'm doing a course that goes along with my book, Motherhood Redeemed, which is just a virtual course that people can actually walk through the book and unpack it and learn more about it there. So those are two projects that are on hand right now.
You're doing something with marriage as well. Is that the one you're saying? Your marriage?
I have a marriage workbook that I did several years ago, which is available. It's a workbook. I also have a workbook for single Catholic women who are trying to discern, their vocation and that kind of thing.
You are a wealth of knowledge. This is her book, Kimberly Cook, Motherhood Redeemed. Check it out. Please check out too some of her website. And Jane Ann, can you tell her to reach you? She's my co-host.
You can reach me at dimeadozenmom.com and on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay. And I'm Ellen Mongan from Mom. My website, www.ellenmongan.com. We enjoyed you so much. There's a wealth of knowledge for you back. And moms, you need people like this to help you out with these new kids coming along. The high school is an age where they really, really need to be around positive peer pressure, and you need to know your face so you can pass it on. Thank you again from Wow Mom. We say bye, aloha, adios. I'm going to turn off this screen and we're going to say thank you so much.